My name is Adrian Vance, and for 15 years, I had poured my lifeblood into Skyline Innovations. It was more than a job. It was my canvas, my legacy. We built a company from a small startup into a tech titan in the heart of Seattle, renowned for cutting-edge AI solutions and the unbreakable partnerships I forged. My office at the top of the Millennium Tower, overlooking the shimmering Puget Sound, felt like home. But the afternoon of October 17th, that home became a cage. I had just flown back from Tokyo, still buzzing from securing the Ether Systems global integration deal. A contract that wasn't just big, it was transformative. It solidified our position as industry leaders for the next decade, projected to add a cool $30 million in annual recurring revenue. My phone had been vibrating non-stop with congratulations from my team. Yet, as I stepped into the mahogany-paneled boardroom, a chill that had nothing to do with the Seattle autumn seeped into my bones. Victor Thorne, our CEO, a man who once preached about innovation and trust, sat at the head of the table. His smile was a brittle mask, failing to reach the cold calculation in his eyes. The familiar knot tightened in my gut. It was the same sick certainty I felt when I learned my father, a humble craftsman who taught me the value of building things that last, had received his grim diagnosis. Everything was about to change, and not for the better. The board members, the CFO, Marcus Bell, and the head of operations, Sophia Chen, were rigid, their gazes glued to the polished table, to their phones, anywhere but my eyes. But she knew. She always knew. I had built this company. From struggling with basic software upgrades, I had spearheaded its growth into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, not with slick presentations, but with genuine relationships. I flew through blizzards for client meetings, answered calls at 3 a.m. when a system crashed, built friendships rooted in trust. Quantum dynamics, Nexus AI, Ether Systems. These weren't just names on a spreadsheet. They were partnerships built on handshake deals and promises kept. Victor shuffled a stack of papers, pulling out a document I didn't recognize. The door swept open, and Kaelen Thorne, Victor's nephew, strolled in. Kaelen, the Harvard business prodigy, whose family's tech empire on the East Coast opened doors I'd had to kick down with relentless grit. He'd been lurking in the shadows for months, a strategic consultant, asking unsettling questions about my client relationships, always with that unsettling, predatory smile. He exuded an arrogance that made my skin crawl. No preamble, no explanation, just a surgical strike. My world fractured. 15 years. Quantum dynamics, Nexus AI, Ether Systems. All the late nights, the weekend calls, the painstaking relationship building, gone. We appreciate everything you've done for Skyline. Victor continued, the corporate veneer hardening his voice. Better, broader industry connections to take us to the next level. Nothing personal, Adrian. Nothing personal? My gaze swept the table. Belle wouldn't meet my eyes. Chen fiddled with her stylus. Family doesn't do this. Kalen's voice, smooth as polished glass, cut through my shock. The transition will be seamless. I've already reached out to several key accounts. That stopped me cold. Quantum dynamics, Dr. Eris Thorne, their brilliant CEO, had personally requested I handle their account, invited me to his daughter's graduation last spring, called me Adrian, not Mr. He trusted me with their most sensitive AI development. I stood slowly, my spine stiffening. Connections are everything in this business, I said, my voice steady, calm, betraying none of the earthquake raging inside me. I shook Kaelen's hand. A brief, cold touch. Best of luck to you, Kaelen. Then I walked out. In the elevator, my phone buzzed. 3 missed calls from Dr. Adrian Thorne. A text from Lena. They're cleaning out your office. So sorry, Adrian. 22 years she'd been with the company, and they locked her out for helping me. The elevator descended, past floors of smiling faces who thought they understood business, past cubicles filled with ambitious young professionals who still believed loyalty and hard work were enough. By the time I reached the parking garage, a fierce resolve was already hardening in my chest. Connections are everything. They were about to learn exactly what that meant. That Thursday night, my home office, once a sanctuary of productivity, felt like a tomb. Boxes of my personal effects sat by the front door, courtesy of Lena, a silent testament to the speed of my professional execution. Friday morning, I called Dr. Adrian Thorne at Quantum Dynamics. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with frustration. Adrian, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. Some slick kid named Thorne called, claiming he's taking over. I laid it all out. No corporate jargon, just the raw truth. Dr. Thorne listened, a rare trait in our fast-paced industry. Those sons of bitches, he growled when I finished. After everything you've built for them, I'm starting my own firm, I told him. Vance Solutions. Count us in, he declared. 1 down. Next, I called Sophia Chen at Nexus AI. She had worked her way up from a junior developer to CTO, and we had navigated countless crises together. She gasped when I explained. Adrian, that company would be nothing without your foresight. 2 down. By lunch, I had spoken to 10 of my major clients. 8 were ready to jump ship with me. The 9th, Ether Systems, wanted an in-person meeting before committing. That should have been my first warning. I drove to Ether's gleaming headquarters, expecting a routine conversation. Instead, I found myself facing a stern-faced corporate lawyer and a young procurement director who looked fresh out of business school. Mr. Vance, the director began, consulting a tablet as if reading a script. Ether Systems has decided to honor our existing contract with Skyline Innovations. Mr. Thorne presented a very compelling case for continuity. He also shared. My blood ran cold. Kaelen Thorne had been here yesterday afternoon, right after my termination. He'd slid a legal document across the table. Ether wasn't just staying with Skyline. They were threatening to sue me if I contacted any of their employees regarding tech services. I drove home in a daze, my phone buzzing relentlessly. Dr. Adrian Thorne called first. Adrian, my legal team is getting pushback on the contract termination. Skyline is claiming breach of contract, threatening to sue for the full value of our agreement, $30 million over 3 years. Sophia Chen called 20 minutes later with the same story. Skyline was playing hardball, threatening legal action against any client who dared to follow me. Kaelen Thorne had spent the morning visiting my biggest accounts, armed with lawyers and veiled threats. By evening, 6 of my 8 confirmed clients had called back, their voices filled with apology and fear. It's not personal, Adrian. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the business plan I'd scribbled on a napkin. Vance Solutions. It sounded good in theory, but theory didn't pay legal bills. Kaelen had outmaneuvered me. While I was making phone calls and shaking hands, he was building a legal wall around my client base. Corporate warfare at its finest. But he had made one critical mistake. He assumed I would fight fair. Saturday morning, I drove to Lena's cozy bungalow with her favorite artisan coffee and pastries. "They fired me yesterday," she said before I could speak. 22 years, Adrian. "I'm so sorry, Lena." She poured coffee into mismatched mugs, the comfortable informality of someone who had worked beside me for over a decade. She handed me a manila folder. "Remember when Kaelen started asking all those questions about your client relationships?" Inside the folder were copies of my client files, contact information, contract details, my personal notes on relationship building, everything Kaelen needed to systematically target my accounts. He knew exactly who to call and what to say. Lena continued. "They had their legal team draft threatening letters before you were even fired. The deeper I looked, the worse it got. Kaelen hadn't just stolen my job. He had meticulously studied my methods, analyzed my relationships, and built a strategy to neutralize me before I even knew I was under attack. But there was more. Look at page 12, Lena said, her voice dropping. A memo from Victor Thorne to the board, dated 3 weeks ago. They had been planning this for months. "Page 15, Lena whispered, her finger tracing a line on a financial projection. It showed how Skyline could increase profit margins by renegotiating my client contracts without me in the picture. They could push for better terms, reduce service levels, and pocket the difference. They weren't just replacing me. They were planning to exploit the very relationships I had built." "There's more," Lena said, pulling out her phone. I listened to Victor Thorne's voice crackling through the speaker. "Vance was useful for building the business, but he's too much of a liability now. Clients trust him more than they trust the company. That's dangerous." Kalen's response was equally chilling. "My family dealt with the same problem when my uncle took over Thorne Enterprises. They weren't just firing me. They were systematically destroying my ability to compete. The legal threats, the contract disputes, the intimidation tactics, all planned in advance." I handed the phone back to Lena and sat in silence for a long moment. She asked, "I thought about my father, his calloused hands building things that lasted. He had taught me that work was about more than a paycheck. It was about building something meaningful. But he had also taught me that sometimes you have to fight for what you have built." "I'm going to teach them about loyalty," I said finally, "flowing down or up." Monday morning, I didn't start my own company. Instead, I made a different kind of call. "Hi, Chloe. This is Adrian Vance." Pinnacle Tech Solutions was Skyline's biggest competitor in the Seattle market. Smaller, more agile, and hungry for the kind of contracts I had been managing. Their CEO, Maya Sharma, a brilliant visionary, had tried to recruit me twice over the past 5 years. "Adrian Vance," Maya said when she came on the line. "I heard some interesting news about you and Skyline." We met at a small, independent cafe, far from the corporate corridors where industry gossip spread like wildfire. Maya was exactly what you'd expect from someone who had built a tech powerhouse from the ground up. Direct, pragmatic, and smart enough to recognize opportunity when it walked through her door. "Let me guess," she said after I explained my situation. That got her attention. "I bring you $30 million in new business within 90 days, I said, my voice steady. "In exchange, you give me equity and complete autonomy over global partnerships." $30 million is a big number, Adrian. Quantum Dynamics, Nexus AI, Ether Systems, and 7 others. All contracts I brought to Skyline, all relationships I built personally. Maya stirred her coffee, studying me like she was solving a complex algorithm. Skyline will fight you. Let them try. I never signed a non-compete clause. Victor Thorne always said those agreements showed a lack of trust in employees. I pulled out my phone and showed her text messages from the weekend. Dr. Aris Thorne, ready to move when you are. Sophia Chen from Nexus AI, just waiting for your signal. David Chen from Alpine Innovations, another former client. Ether Systems caved to pressure, but Alpine doesn't bend to threats. The legal intimidation worked on 2 companies, I continued, but it backfired with the rest. Maya leaned back in her chair. 20% for the business I bring in. We shook hands in the parking lot. By Wednesday, I had signed employment papers with Pinnacle Tech Solutions as Executive Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. By Friday, I was making calls. Dr. Thorne, this is Adrian. The conversations were different this time. Instead of asking clients to take a risk on an untested startup, I was offering them a proven alternative. Pinnacle had the infrastructure, the industry standing, and the legal backing to handle major contracts. All they needed was the relationships. Quantum Dynamics terminated their Skyline contract on Monday. Nexus AI followed on Tuesday. By the end of the week, 7 major accounts had switched to Pinnacle. Kaelen Thorne called me Thursday afternoon. "We need to talk," he said, his voice strained. "No," I said. I hung up and got back to work. The call came at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. Victor Thorne himself, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. He roared without preamble. "Good morning to you too, Victor. $25 million in lost revenue in 6 weeks, Victor. $25 million. I sat in my new office at Pinnacle Tech Solutions, looking out at the Seattle skyline through windows that faced directly toward Skyline Innovations building. We had deliberately chosen this location. Sometimes, the best revenge is making sure your enemies can see exactly how well you're doing. Sounds like a management problem, I said calmly. We can work this out. Come back. I already did. Silence on the other end. I hung up and turned back to my computer. 4 more clients had requested proposals from Pinnacle over the weekend. Word was spreading through the industry that Adrian Vance was available again. And this time, he was working for a company that understood the true value of relationships. My phone buzzed with a text from Lena, who now worked as my executive assistant at Pinnacle. Kaelen just walked into the break room looking like someone stole his lunch money. At 3:00 p.m., I got another call, this time from Marcus Bell, Skyline's CFO. "Adrian, we need to talk about a transition back to Skyline. Your old position back, 30% salary increase." I laughed, actually laughed out loud. "Marcus, 6 weeks ago, you sat in that boardroom and watched Victor fire me. You didn't say a word. It's a desperate offer." That evening, I drove past Skyline Innovations building on my way home. Half the lights were off. The parking lot that used to be full at 7:09 p.m. was nearly empty. 3 months later, I was reviewing quarterly numbers when Lena knocked on my office door. She handed me a newspaper clipping, business section, local news. I read the article twice. Victor Thorne was quoted as saying the acquisition would provide new opportunities for growth and expansion. Corporate speak for we were hemorrhaging money and had to sell before we went bankrupt. Kaelen Thorne was not mentioned in the article at all, I asked. "Fired last month, Adrian," Lena said. I folded the newspaper and set it aside. No satisfaction in watching a company die, even one that had betrayed me. Skyline had been my home for 15 years, Good people worked there, people who had nothing to do with Victor Thorne's bad decisions. Lena, see if any of the former Skyline development or support staff need work. Already on it, she said, a slight smile on her face. I spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing applications from former Skyline employees, people I'd worked with for years, now looking for new opportunities because their executives had prioritized superficial connections over genuine competence. At 6:00 p.m., I locked my office and walked to the parking garage. Dr. Adrian Thorne was hosting a client dinner that night, the kind of relationship-building event that Kaelen probably would have delegated to an underling. I drove through downtown Seattle, past gleaming office buildings full of ambitious young professionals who thought business was about algorithms and profit margins. Maybe some of them were right. Looking back on it all, sitting here in my thriving new office at Pinnacle, surrounded by a team that genuinely believes in our mission, the lessons are crystal clear. This journey wasn't just about revenge. It was about rediscovering what truly matters: integrity, trust, and the unwavering power of genuine human connection. For years, I believed that hard work and loyalty were enough. I poured my soul into building relationships, thinking that was the foundation of success. And for a long time, it was. But when corporate greed and superficial connections tried to tear it all down, I learned that while trust is earned, loyalty, true loyalty, flows both ways. It's a two-way street, built on respect and mutual understanding. If a company doesn't value your contributions beyond a simple metric, if they see you as a liability for being too effective, then it's not a partnership. It's an exploitation. The biggest takeaway? Don't just build a career. Build a network of trust. Those relationships, the people you truly connect with and help along the way, become your strongest allies when the storms hit. They're the ones who will stand by you, not because of a contract, but because of a shared history and mutual respect. And when faced with betrayal, you don't have to play by their dirty rules. You can find your own path, a path rooted in your values, and build something even stronger, even more impactful. This story isn't unique to the tech world. It plays out every day in every industry. Whether you're navigating a tough boss, a changing industry, or a personal challenge, remember, your character, your integrity, and the genuine connections you forge are your most valuable assets. Protect them, nurture them, and never let anyone convince you that they're worth less than fleeting profits or superficial titles. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt undervalued or seen the power of true loyalty, please hit that like button. Your support helps us share these crucial lessons. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience and real-world wisdom. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear it. And I'd love to read your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. What lessons have you learned about trust and loyalty in your own life or career? Let's keep this conversation going.